All right, so where does critical come from? Critical is not bad. It's not being negative. Some people hear critical and they think that we're talking about something negative. It's not necessarily the case. Critical comes from a Greek word that means to judge. It's related to criterion, meaning the means of judgment. So you got critical, criteria, criterion. Critical thinkers use these to refer to the standards that they use to make judgments. So they're just the standards. It's not necessarily anything negative. For example, psychologists, they use criteria to accurately diagnose mental disorders in their clients. So you might be thinking, okay, so why are we even talking about this? When you think about which claims you should accept, you want to use some type of criteria. You want to use some type of a standard to decide which theory is best. On opinions, obviously everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and some opinions, ideas, theories, they've been shown to be better than others. And when we use an appropriate criteria and the standards, it can help us to decide which one's more accurate. Everyone has their own opinion, and they are free to have that. Just keep in mind that most people do not engage in a lot of critical thinking. It's hard. It takes time. It uses up cognitive resources. It's easier to just kind of go with the flow, go with those mental shortcuts, go with the crowd. So when you are evaluating the claims using criteria, you will find that some theories are better than others. As an example, some opponents of Darwin's theory of evolution sometimes say it's just a theory, implying it is no better than any other theory. Darwin's theory has been shown to be one of the best supported and most powerful theories in all of science based on scientific standards of evidence. And that's not just according to this textbook. It's actually in a lot of psychology textbooks that I've found, and it's definitely going to be in basically all biological textbooks. To help clear this up, what exactly is Darwin's theory? There's two main things that we're going to talk about here. One, that organisms change gradually over time, meaning that they evolve. And two, natural selection, meaning that organisms, they have traits or characteristics that help them survive in their environment. And those that do will survive long enough to reproduce and to pass those genes on. If you live long enough to reproduce, you're doing something right. And so those traits are adaptive. They help you to survive. Those two things, change over time and natural selection, they're not controversial in science. Those two things, change over time and natural selection, they are not controversial in science. And that's it. That's the backbone of the theory. We think those ideas might be controversial here in this country at this time. But it wasn't too long after Darwin published that even the church got behind his theories. The controversy that we think of now actually came later and happened in America. Anyways, change over time and natural selection. Lots and lots of evidence for those two things. So, what makes Darwin's theory a good scientific theory? Its definition, a theory is a set of general principles that attempts to explain and predict behavior or other phenomenon. Darwin's theory is scientifically sound because it makes accurate predictions and it helps to explain things that are going on in the world. It is consistent. It has higher quality scientific evidence compared to competing theories. As an example from the book, Darwin's theory of evolution can help explain how dogs evolved from wolves, and it makes sense. If you are not into Darwin, here is another example, round earth theory versus flat earth theory. We've been talking about flat earth theory for a few years now. It's interesting. Isaac Asimov, he was a famous science fiction writer. He was talking about this in the 1980s. The round earth theory is better because it makes more accurate predictions than the flat earth theory. That's according to Asimov and lots of other people. The flat earth theory may appear to be true from our ordinary visual experience, but higher quality scientific evidence, such as a picture of Earth, refute it. So a good theory, one that works, one that has a lot of evidence, and the evidence is superior to competing theories. But we trick ourselves sometimes. There's a psychological trick that we do to ourselves called belief perseverance. Basically, it is a thinking error which people refuse to revise or reject their faulty belief when confronted with evidence that clearly is refuting it. So flat earthers continue to believe that the earth is flat despite satellite photos of a round earth. We get tied up a lot into our opinions and our thoughts. Our self is wrapped up in those, and we don't want to change our minds. It means we were wrong at one point, and it means we feel duped if we were wrong. It's better to be duped for a short period of time than to carry around false ideas your entire life. At least that's my opinion. All right, on the next slide, we'll talk about some thinking errors.